Welcome to your English class, children. In our syllabus, we have now two things to do. One is this poetry, The Chimney Sweeper by William Blake, and the other one is a prose piece. Now, this Chimney Sweeper is a very beautiful poem. It's one of the poems really close to my heart. So, before we directly delve into the poem itself, let us understand the background in which this poem was written by William Blake. The poem was first published in The Songs of Innocence. Now, The Songs of Innocence was Blake's first version of this narrative poem, and the theme was about the young chimney sweepers of Europe. Now, when I talk about chimney sweepers, the first thing, if you close your eyes, it will be chimneys, not the kind of chimneys that we use, but generally the one which we see in old English movies. And since chimneys were what? They were basically vents through which the ash, the soot it acted like an exhaust, was taken out of the household. So naturally, the chimney needed cleaning over and over again. And Europe, being quite a temperate or quite a cold place, the northern parts of Europe, this became a very popular employment. I wouldn't say employment, it became a very popular work at this point of time. Now, these chimney sweepers were very, very young, which is the reason why the poet was quite concerned about them and decided to write about them. Because these people, the authors, the poets, they are very influential, and we always know that the pen is mightier than the sword. So, as you can see, on your left is the cover of Songs of Innocence. And look how beautifully illustrated the chimney sweeper is. This is like one of the drafts of chimney sweeper, and this is how it looked. Now, the chimney sweeper, the poem is set against the dark background of child labor. This terrible practice was prevalent in England in the late 18th and 19th centuries. Very young boys were sold off. They were as young as 4 or 5 years old to clean the chimneys. This inconsiderate act took place to facilitate the cleaning procedure. You can look at one of the chimneys with the photograph on the right. Look at the twisted design of the chimney, or even the one which is standing rectangularly. Can you see that how narrow they were? So naturally, the small size of these children, and obviously for a person who is of my age, and consider a person of your age, and consider a person who is your sibling, a very small child, the flexibility of the body also is better the more young you are. So their small size and flexibility accounted for the cleanest of chimneys. No matter how the chimney looked, whether it was straight and easy to go in, whether it was twisted and curved and difficult to slide through. But the size and the flexibility of the children were a real matter of consideration. The large houses created by the wealth and the trade, they had these, huge rooms. There were palatial rooms at that point of time, and there were several chimneys, and the chimneys needed to be lit constantly and cleaned constantly, and they could be cleaned only by a small child crawling through them. So basically, these chimneys literally became black coffins because there were so many little boys, little as I told you, as young as 4 or 5 year old, who met their death while providing this kind of service. If you can look at the photograph on the left, you'll see that there's a man so big when he is standing, and the little child who is standing atop the chimney, more or less they are of the same height. And I'm sure this adult is giving a good scolding to the little one. I don't know for what mistake he has done, but this photo is of is hundreds of years old. But can you see the misery that is perpetuated from that time till today? I'm quite certain that no one in their proper frame of mind would look at this photo and just laugh it off. There is a tinge, a sense of misery that has passed from that era to this one. Now, when we talk about these children, as we look at these children, what can we see? Of course, the children were oppressed and they had a terrible existence. They had no rights whatsoever. And what was life? Life was just a process of inhalation and exhalation. They were breathing. That is why they were alive. So they existed. I cannot use the word that since they were breathing, they were living. They lived. No. I can't use the word lived for them. Because if you're living a life, that means there is some positivity about it. But for these children who were deprived of all rights, access to anything, health, sanitization, education, proper food, love, care, you cannot call that a life. So, and at that point of time in England, this was socially accepted. Yes, this is what happens. No one raises an eyebrow. Just like sometimes when you see a stray dog, in some places, stray dogs are like, okay, fine, there are still stray dogs on the road. They haven't been picked up and neutered. And in some places in India, stray dogs are all right. No one gives them a second look. No one is bothered about them because that is so normal. So at that point of time, in that era, the existence of the small children working day and night without any hours, basically specified hours, and at such terrible conditions was a socially accepted norm. The children in this field of work were often unfed, having no access to money, and please do not remain under the false notion that they were paid after they had done their job. No, they did not get paid. So without food, without money, obviously they could not afford to be properly clothed also. In most cases, the children made their woeful end from either falling through the chimneys or from lung damage or from several other horrible diseases as they worked constantly breathing in the soot. So can you now understand why Blake chose this particular subject? Since he knew his pen was mightier than the sword, he wanted the people to realize that the boy who is cleaning the chimney at your home, no, we are not supposed to do that. He is a human being. He is a little boy, just like your own son, who is enjoying the warmth of the hearth. So please, this has to stop now. Before we go any further, let me just read the poem for you once. And this one, which was first published in Songs of Innocence. It says, "When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep." There's little Tom Dacre who cried when his head that curled like a lamb's back was shaved. So I said, "Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head is bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair." And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was sleeping, he had such a sight. But that thousands of sweepers like Dick, Joe, Ned, Jack were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, that he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon the clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom, if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark and got on with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. Now we move on to the first stanza. This is an actual photograph of a small little young boy who by profession, unpaid profession mind you, was a chimney sweeper. See, the poem starts in first person and it is about a very young chimney sweeper who exposes the evils of chimney sweeping as a part of the cruelties created by the sudden increase of wealth. Because at this point of time, you see, you had the industrial revolution going on. The people who were successful, they had a lot of money in their hand, and of course what would they do? They would build plush houses with acres and acres of land, and there they would be employing other people, while a section of the society was trying very hard to ration their food. So, when my mother died, I was very young. So, my mother, the first line creates a big impact. Motherless? It's like the roof is taken off your head and on a very, very stormy day. So these children, let's come back to these children again. They were either orphans or were sold by poor parents to master sweepers. So there was a chain, a racket, a person who was running the entire organization of having these small children work for him. He would send the children, just like car rentals here, that I have a lot of cars, and of course, if whatever you require a small Wagoner, you require an Innova, I will send it to you accordingly. You pay me and I will disburse the funds accordingly. But oh yes, I am the one who is making the lion's share of the profit. So these children were either orphans or were sold by poor parents, or they were probably found somewhere at the corner of the road, cold, bare, hungry, a young waif. So here also, when this child's mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So here it's happened sort of in both ways. This child was affected. His mother was no longer there. A mother, even she will go without food to put one grain of or one morsel of food in the mouth of the child. With due respect to all fathers, this one was not an exemplary father, of course, I must say, because maybe due to dearth of any money, maybe he was driven to such extreme poverty that he was bound to sell his little one to a master sweeper. And you know, children, sometimes they were sold for as less as 2 guineas. A man's life, a human life worth that. And today we call you the future of the world, because children, you are the future. So what's the worth of a future? 2 guineas. Now, as I told you, they suffered from cancers caused by the soot, and occasionally the little children, terrified of this terrible darkness once they got into the chimneys, got lost within them. And then what happened? They would fall down, they would die, sometimes just there remains were what was discovered. Anyway, now let's just leave that grotesque part. So this poem opens with a little boy narrating. As I told you, it's a narrative poem, narrating the story of his miserable life as well as telling sad tales of other chimney sweeper boys. The little boy narrates that he was very young when his mother died. He was then sold off by his father to a master sweeper. As I am telling you, since we are no one to judge parents, I would give the father a slight benefit of doubt and say that assumably he was driven by extreme poverty to take the step that he did. And now this boy's age was so tender, he was so young that he could not even pronounce the word sweep. Why would he have to say that? Because often when you are in your home, sometimes a vendor who passes by in your colony, he has to shout out about the things, like if it is winter and a Kashmiri person is selling his wares, he would be shouting kaleen, shawl and things like that. It is that what is going to attract you. Otherwise, no one is sitting on their stairs trying to figure out when the vegetable vendor would come or when my Kashmiri vendor would come. So they shout, making themselves public that yes, I am near your home at your service and this is the service that I am able to provide you. So this child would have to say sweep, 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 sweep. So if my chimney needs a bit of sweeping, I would run outside and I would tell the child that wait, I need your services. So his age was, he was so young that he could not even pronounce the word sweep properly. And of course, living such a miserable life, he would cryingly pronounce it as weep. And naturally, this despondent life made him actually weep, realizing the condition that he was in. The pun intended through the word weep so many times in the third line of the opening stanza, it holds a pathetic significance. Most chimney sweepers like him were so young that their tongues were not, developed enough to produce the word sweep, and therefore they lisped weep. And this, children, also for those of you who are interested in history, this kind of a treatment for the class, the have-nots, the people who were not rich, the poorer class, this gave rise actually to major revolutions. This, we can say, the French Revolution is a classic example of this. So now that you have learned who William Blake was, a man of many talents, and you know what background the chimney sweeper was written in, and we have also started with the poem, reflect on it, read it well, and if you wish, you can do a little bit of research on your own also about the little children and the sort of life that they led at that point of time. So, till we meet again, we'll proceed with the poem again. But next time we meet, please make sure that you are, at least you have a basic knowledge, you retain the knowledge of what we had done today. Take care and have a wonderful day.